Our session today is building business solutions on Office 365 and SharePoint Online. I'm Darrell Trimble. I'm from SP Marketplace. I'm the CEO of SP Marketplace. We're the leader in Office 365 business solutions. We provide SP Business Suite, which is an out-of-the-box set of portals and business application templates for small to medium businesses. We started in 2012, and since then, over 700 customers worldwide are using our products. You can reach us at spmarketplace.com. Me, I've got 30 years in software, 10 years in SharePoint. And hopefully we can bring to you some of the tips and hints that we've learned in using Office 365 and SharePoint Online to make it a much more productive environment for your organization. The agenda for this session is, first of all, let's take a look at Office 365 and have a discussion about, are you really getting all you can out of it? Many organizations are not. Next, we'll talk about the different components of an overall business solution. SharePoint apps, next generation portal sites, site templates, web parts, and so on. It can be somewhat confusing, so we'll go over and explain some of this. We'll talk about what you can use as an integrated business solutions model, and then how you can assemble business solutions in Office 365. Many of you have bought into the whole promise of Microsoft Office 365, and there is an incredible amount in this platform that you can use. The key thing is, will you get the most out of the platform? Part of that vision that Microsoft is putting across is taking the Office 365 platform and SharePoint as part of that platform and allowing it to create a central hub for communication, collaboration, and automation of internal services to your organization, as well as interacting with your outside constituents, customers, and partners. The reality, though, for most Office 365 customers is that they end up using only a small portion of the total potential of Office 365. Often they start out by moving their email into the cloud so that they can save money and not have the hassle of Exchange servers. They may also even do some SharePoint document sharing and so on, using SharePoint in its most basic form. But often that's where it stops. Where the real value of Office 365 can come in, though, is when you bring in business process automation and wrap it as a full solution for your organization. That's where the real value of Office 365 can play. Now, one of the things that's become very apparent this year is that Microsoft really is looking at Office 365 beyond just an office automation system, but really as an organizational ecosystem that can be a central place that your employees and others can collaborate and automate different processes within the organization. And what we're going to show today is how SharePoint can be brought in to actually automate and bring in an intranet structure that can be an intuitive yet vibrant place your employees can interact. Key to this, though, is it has to be part of this overall ecosystem. It has to look and have the same branding, as well as interact with the other components of Office 365. So, in building business solutions in SharePoint, first of all, you have to understand the components of it. And here's some definitions. First of all, you may have heard about SharePoint apps. Originally, I think they were a little bit overblown in what their role was in a business solution, but I think that's settled down. And what they are is components within the business solution that can fulfill specific utilities and functions. Something that was recently announced by Microsoft is NextGen Portals. This is pretty exciting stuff. These are portals that can actually deliver collaborative services such as video management, people and documents, delve, and search capabilities. These are all enhanced capabilities really targeted at the end user to enhance their overall work environment. And then there's business solutions. These are your traditional SharePoint sites implemented as business solutions, which may bring in different apps and web parts and different components. They tend to be more operational in function, such as HR, finance, or team sites for specific groups. They also might be an intranet as it's delivered. And then there's an overall operational structure. This is how the solutions and all of these components fit together in the context of your business operation, in which the business is organized and operates. This is how you make it intuitive for your people in your organization to use it. For many, this can be confusing. So let's kind of go over this again. So there are apps. These are individual components, very much like apps on your phone that do specific functions for specific reasons. We also see apps in your Office environment or your Windows environment as well. Again, they tend to be very specific functions that help you in your everyday life. The second area is really what we call business solutions. And this is usually for a team or a department or a group. And they're usually combined in a SharePoint site where they might have, for instance, in an HR team portal, an employee directory, an onboarding set of functions, an organization chart, perhaps a help screen, reviews, performance reviews, and even time off or that type of thing, as well as a help desk. So this is actually a solution which combines, in some cases, multiple things. Now, some of the issues is you usually have to build these into a team site or portal. You may have, if you try to use apps in these things, they may have different user interfaces. You might have different permission schemes with apps. So the key thing is figure out where it's the right place to use apps in a solution. And a lot of apps can't share common data like employee and so on. So it's important to know where to use apps and where to use the business solution overall. And then finally, the overall business solution should fit into an organizational structure. This is usually in the context of your organization so that it's intuitive for your employees to interact and go through the different parts of your site structure, which are business solution structure. All this together creates an environment that is an overall organizational structure of solutions that serves your organization. Now, something that Microsoft announced this year that we just related to a little bit in our definitions is what's called NextGen Portals. And what these are actually solution portals. They are actually built behind the scenes on a SharePoint site. And these are portals that deliver certain collaboration services and so on within Office 365. So that's another thing that you can consider in your overall mix of business solutions in here. And they'll continue to deliver more and more of these. And these are actually going to be very helpful in your overall design that you have for your business solutions. So there's a lot of things here. How do you combine these into an overall solution for your organization? Well, there is a way. And we call it an integrated business solution model. We actually use it in delivering some of our templates. But you can also use this same model to create this in your own organization. And with this, what you can do is you can actually take and define your organizational structure, and within that organizational structure, create your site templates or your site solutions, business solutions, and within those to actually augment those with different apps to create automation within those. And with that, then leverage all the different components and services of Office 365 as well as NextGen Portals. This is an overall model that we have found works very well in deploying an overall business solution model in an organization. So the first thing you want to do is put the SharePoint structure into the context of the organization. This is a set of sites and subsites. In this example, we have a typical organization with an intranet portal at the top, might have some self-service. This might be some policies, procedures, that type of thing, libraries, as well as maybe a form center that you have different forms that they have to fill out in doing their jobs. It's good to centralize these things so that they're not spread out all over into different departments and so on. You can also do some centralized approvals, so managers don't have to go all over the place to approve things as well. They can come to a central site to do that. The next level is the actual departments themselves. So you might have an HR department. There might be a staff site, and there might be an HR employee portal, which is specifically for employees to go get information from. Same with IT, marketing, admin, sales, and services, and others. So this is the typical structure, and this is what we mean by putting it into the context of the organization. So the next thing you may want to do is go out and see what app solutions there might be out on for instance, the App Store. Now remember, these are only components that you'll be using, and what you'll want to do is insert them into your overall structure that you have there. So what you'll see is you may actually use some of these App Store components or apps, and they may actually be inserted or accessed from different sites within your SharePoint structure. And so here we see apps put into that overall structure. This is what we meant by an integrated business solutions module, is bringing all the components together. Here's an example of a finished out intranet structure. And as you can see here, obviously there's some branding and other things that have gone on. It's very much part of the Office 365 environment. What we see here is the top level intranet, an example of that. And so we can see that there's upcoming events, company announcements, perhaps a message from the CEO. There's links, using promoted links here for the company. This one happens to have the ability to personalize links. This was brought in by an app here, as well as we have company news and other things as well. Now, we can see that there's quick links to things that people used often. To the second level of this structure, we also have employee services with an employee directory, help central, and then we have department sites that the employee can go to. So this is an example of a structure that is set up so that when an employee comes into it, through the sites up here, that they can actually come in and see the latest news and then navigate to where they want to go, as well as to have links to different things outside and so on. This is what we call a business solution, and it's implemented with a number of different web parts, apps, as well as SharePoint basic capabilities like lists and libraries. Let's take a look at what's behind the scenes here. What you'll see if we go to our site contents is that we have many lists and libraries. Here's company news, which is an announcements list, and company announcements. We have company events, which is a calendar, and other things as well. We have things that are lists that are related to these other lists, like categories, or we also have third-party pieces in here. This happens to be a contextual help capability, and then you can actually come down to the subsite level and see all the different subsites. These are our department and employee self-service subsites. So as you can see behind the scenes, you can see all the components. But for the employee, it is an intuitive, to the context of the organization type of structure. So let's kind of step through the process. First of all, set up an intranet structure in the context of your organization. This is a best practices picture that we found in the many different customer that we have out there that it works very well, of having different layers, an organizational layer for organizational communications and so on, a self-service layer where you combine and have a central place that employees can go in and get things such as documents and forms and even have service requests or a help desk for the organization, and then a departments level and actually have these integrate and talk to each other. So let's apply it to our organization. Here we're taking the same thing and applying it to our organization now. So we have an HR, an IT, we have a marketing, and an operations. So the next thing then is to actually take each module and fill it out. So here we have an intranet home, which we took a team site and modified it. And for this, you actually have requirements that you gather, then you do a design, and then you figure out what components you need to actually fill out the site. What the site itself, core components such as pages, lists, and libraries, maybe even some workflows for automation. There may be some SharePoint apps you put in there, and NextGen Portal links and so on that you take advantage of. And then you actually have a completed solution, which then is made up of all these different components to make up, for instance, your intranet homepage. And overall, then you do the design and you deliver it. Here's an example of one intranet homepage that has been delivered. So let's take something that is at the department level, an HR solution. So again, we take a look at the different requirements, the different functions that you're looking to use for your HR. Those become the requirements. You do the design, you figure out what components can be delivered through apps, what components are just lists and libraries. Then you assemble those components and create your HR staff and a My HR portal. And you'll have core components such as lists of employees and applicants, libraries with employee docs, policies and reviews, and SharePoint apps perhaps. There's some of these out on the SharePoint store for onboarding, time off, org chart, directory content, and so on. And this is how you actually create an HR business solution that your employees can use that's part of that overall structure. So now let's go take a look at this HR site live. So this site actually is a fairly complex site with lots of components in it. And what we'll see is actually what we've done here is there are actually two faces to this site. What I'm in now is for the HR staff. And this is one of the things you have to think about when designing business solutions. Who should get permissions to get at this site? It might make sense to have an HR site, but you don't want everybody getting at all employee data. So we have an employee list. We have other lists like certifications. We have employee documents and so on. We have other functions in HR, such as a hiring function. This happens to have an applicants list that we keep track of information, as well as an onboarding function. This onboarding function is actually delivered through an app plus some document libraries and so on. Performance appraisals is a document library. Policy management is also a set of document libraries, and benefits is a list which shows the different benefit plans and which employees are on what benefit plans as well. We've also built a dashboard where we've used web parts to build the dashboard itself. So again, we have a combination of list libraries, apps, and web parts. Let's just take a quick look at the App Store where you can actually find some of these apps, and I'll actually show you a couple of them we've used in the HR. To go to the App Store, you just say Add an App, and you can actually go in and find them within the App Store, or you can bring them into your organization. So one of the ones that we have used is onboarding. We can see that in searching for onboarding, there's several of them here. We happen to have used this one, which is a simple employee onboarding. And the nice thing about it is it's open such that we can actually go in and cross-reference an onboard task list with our employee list. And openness is very important in doing this. And so we can bring that in, and I'll go ahead and show you where we use that in our application. So if I go to our HR functions and go to onboarding, what we'll see is that onboarding consists of a process of using standard task lists for certain types of roles and certain types of either onboards, terminations, or whatever. And so if I were to go in and say add standard tasks to a certain onboard, this is actually invoking an app. And so we can see apply standard onboarding task. We can pick the onboard. Maybe it's Kimberly Pond here, and the category, and it may be an onboard. And what it'll actually do is if I hit apply, it will actually create a list of tasks under Kimberly Pond that is for her onboarding and automatically assigns those to different organizations in the company, such as IT or facilities and so on, to get the things done that Kimberly needs done to become a productive employee, such as setting up security badges or setting up an office or setting up different network IDs or even a SharePoint ID. And that's what this onboarding application does within our HR application as part of our overall business solution. So if I were to choose Kimberly and took a look at her onboarding here, I can see information. I cross-reference to her employee information. But also, if we take a look at tasks, we can see a whole list of tasks from a standard task template were assigned to different departments and different people to bring Kimberly on board. So this is an example of using an app within a SharePoint site as well to create an overall business solution. Now, one of the other things you'll want to do is think about how you can use site pages. So for instance, I'm looking at the side which might be used by the HR staff for doing many different things, and it may have information that is confidential and so on, so I don't want everybody to get to it. I just want the HR staff to get to it. However, you can also use site pages and sites to actually implement it so that, for instance, you could deploy an employee portal, which is a site page that limits an employee to only getting their information. So they can make a request to HR or look at their different service requests that are outstanding, any of their reviews, policy acknowledgments, get at my employee profile and change basic information, even get at different portal documents from HR, from a My HR portal perspective. So we've used a site page to actually allow employees to have a view that is limited to only their information within the HR site. That's another design thing that we often do. So back to the HR staff page, we can see that we have standard lists and libraries like tasks and calendars. We've created a calendar, which is a staff schedule, and documents for employee documents, and so on. So we've put it in the context of this team, and it uses some of the standard pieces of SharePoint to do that. So putting things in the context of the group that's going to use it is one of your most important business solution building practices. So let's talk about another very important area of building business solutions, look and feel or branding. A lot of times this is what drives user adoption, and it makes your site a natural part of the organization. So rather than just a naked intranet site, it's always good to actually bring in the colors of the organization. Radiant Solar actually has blue, black, and yellow as their colors, and you notice it matches the black theme that they have going for the Office 365. So it's really important to make your site look good and look part of the organization. But there's also some key kind of framing that you need to do with branding to make sure you don't get into trouble. First of all, realize, and as we discussed earlier, it needs to fit into Office 365 because now your SharePoint site is only one component of many that are going to be used by your employees and your users within Office 365. So if you have an intranet site that looks completely different than Office 365, when they go into things like Delve or other components, it's going to make your intranet site look like a foreign object within the overall ecosystem. It's much better to actually take and design it so that it carries through the same colors, the same kind of metro branding style, so that it looks like it's a natural part of Office 365. So the other reason for this that's very important is at Ignite and recently this year, Microsoft has set aside some guidelines for how to do your SharePoint branding. And this really has to do with the whole concept of SharePoint as part of the Office 365 ecosystem. And so I'm just going to read this to you. Although it's possible, this is from the Microsoft site, although it's possible to create custom master pages and other structural elements as part of a custom branding project, the long-term cost of supporting custom master pages and other structural elements is high. Custom branding can make it more costly for your organization to apply upgrades and provide ongoing support. And we've seen this happen. We've experienced with our customers out there where they've had a very costly but very good-looking branding project on their SharePoint, only to find that an upgrade in Office 365 behind the covers by Microsoft, either the master pages or CSS classes, breaks it. And they have to end up starting all over, and they've lost all that investment into that branding. So you need to make sure you follow these guidelines, or your partners or consultants follow these guidelines too, so that your site won't break in the future due to changes by Microsoft. It also needs to be a natural part of that Office 365 ecosystem. It needs to look like it's part of Delve and part of your email and part of your Office products, as though it's part of that same platform. Do not be lured by flashy intranet sites which are not standard SharePoint. They're going to eventually get into trouble. So some simple branding rules too. Don't change the master page. Minimal CSS changes, and follow the Office 365 color schemes through. That way you can still have a good looking site, but also not have the risk of it breaking due to future changes. this isn't all just easy kind of putting pieces together. You do have some challenges here. You need to be able to build the overall solution structure and solution sites. So you need to have some business analyst knowledge. You need to have at least Power SharePoint skills, Power User SharePoint skills and experience is required. And you need to understand SharePoint limitations about what it can and cannot do. The other challenges are some of the apps out there are not designed to integrate into an overall solution. Sometimes they're contained just to themselves. So for instance, an app to do onboarding tasks may not be able to cross-reference that employee name with your employee list overall. So one of the things with apps that's a challenge is there's no common design guidelines for look and feel or data architecture, and they tend to be isolated with very little integration. So you do have to be careful about what apps you use and don't use. And at present, the apps model requires developers to build integration. You know, that a lot of the integration is through REST calls and JSON. They might be hard-coded and not flexible. So just be aware of that when you're looking at using apps within your overall business solutions. So what are some of your options in doing this? Well, you can design and build them yourself. You'll have a simple set of team sites and that type of thing that can be a good start. You can have it built by consultants. They can actually do the design. They'll be fairly knowledgeable. But this can be expensive and time consuming. Or you can start with templates. For instance, like what we provide, as well as other vendors out there provide specific kind of starter templates that can deliver a full solution, but are also 100% customizable if you know the SharePoint. Learn more about business solutions. Check out our Doing Business 365 blog on spmarketplace.com. Also, you might want to check out the SharePoint Composite Handbook from Microsoft. Just Google that, and I'm sure you'll be able to find that. Another great site for building business solutions on SharePoint is Wonder Laura with Laura Rogers. A whole bunch of great information there. And then there's a great book out there, Beginning SharePoint 2013, Building Business Solutions, and that's available at Amazon. So any of these, as well as many more sources to get into the deep information of developing business solutions. So we're done at this point. We can open up for question and answers, and stay tuned for more great sessions.